1 year into Russian war in Ukraine, the violence persists. Cities lie in ruins, soldiers are dead or wounded, and atrocities have been reported. Ukraine's resistance has surprised, but Russia still poses a destructive threat. The conflict remains uncertain, demanding international attention for a peaceful resolution. Here are 6 scenarios in which the war could end. If the fighting in Ukraine reaches a stalemate, there is a possibility of a negotiated temporary ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. However, this would not mark the end of the conflict but rather a temporary decline in active warfare, resembling a frozen conflict that can fluctuate in intensity. It draws parallels with the 2 Chechen wars in the 1990s, where Russia negotiated a ceasefire to end the First War but then restarted hostilities 3 years later. In this scenario, Russia may aim for a situation where the US and other Western countries lose interest in the conflict and withdraw their support for Ukraine. This shift in the balance of power could then allow Russia to reconquer territory, as initially intended. The possibility of ending the war in Ukraine through a peace deal exists, but it is challenging due to the divergent goals of Russia and Ukraine and their conflicting territorial claims. Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, is heavily invested in the war and unlikely to withdraw without clear successes. The definition of success is unclear, but it may involve Russia claiming portions of Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson oblasts, which could be presented as intended objectives. The more complex question pertains to what Ukraine would be willing to concede in a peace agreement. Giving up Ukrainian territory would be politically perilous for any leader in Kiev. When Russia initiated its unwarranted invasion of Ukraine, its primary objective was to completely seize control of the country. However, it is crucial to acknowledge that Ukraine has already achieved a significant victory by thwarting Russia's initial ambitions. Until February 2022, Russia possessed the world's third most formidable military, surpassed only by the United States and China. Consequently, Ukraine successfully prevented a Russian blitzkrieg operation aimed at capturing the capital, toppling the government, and either incorporating Ukraine into Russia or establishing a puppet regime. At present, it is highly improbable for Russia to entirely reverse the course of the war and fulfill its original objectives. Nevertheless, there remains a possibility for Russia to deal in peace. Russian forces are unlikely to fully retreat as long as Putin remains in power, given the consequences rulers face for losing wars. Despite discontent at home, Putin shows no signs of backing down. While a coup against him is more possible than before, he has created a regime resistant to such attempts through fostering distrust among intelligence agencies. However, if Putin were ousted or died, a complete Russian retreat could occur. Ukrainians believe in the possibility of an outright victory, aiming for the military defeat of Russia. They want military defeat of Russia as the desired outcome, rather than years of prolonged conflict. Putin's concessions on the grain corridor demonstrate Russia's vulnerability. The war in Ukraine may not see a clear victory but could continue for years, characterized by ongoing fighting and no ceasefire. Special forces would engage in back-and-forth clashes along contact lines, while Ukrainian guerrilla actions could persist in Russian-controlled territories. Russia or Belarus might also conduct long-range bombardments on Ukrainian territory. The conflict has entered a war of attrition, with Russia's focus shifting from territorial gains to weakening Ukrainian resources, economy, and military. It remains uncertain which side can endure the prolonged struggle, although Russia has suffered significant losses. Russian General Sergei Surovikin plans to fortify occupied territories. Russia may aim to rebuild its military capabilities for large-scale offensive. Since the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine, Putin has repeatedly made nuclear threats, stating that they are not mere bluffs. The international community and experts are divided on how seriously to interpret these threats. The significant risks are involved in deploying nuclear weapons, including potential nuclear fallout and the political and diplomatic consequences for Putin's regime. While a full-scale military defeat could prompt Putin to resort to battlefield nuclear weapons, the risks would likely outweigh any benefits. The US has already stated that all bets are off if Russia employs nuclear weapons, but the response from NATO and other countries, such as China, remains uncertain. NATO would likely opt for increased sanctions and arming Ukraine to avoid large-scale conflict.